Hi, this is Joe Bolen. Welcome to learning about VisualBasic.net. Well, we've begun to look at programming VisualBasic.net against a database. In the last couple of videos, we've been looking at using Microsoft Access database. In this episode, we're going to begin to look and create our first database in a Microsoft SQL Server LocalDB database. Well, if you're not comfortable or don't know about LocalDB, this is the episode we're going to learn about it. So let's first of all stop and take a look at our documentation for this video and the rest of the series so that you can go out and reference it and study it further in detail. I have out at pastebin.com the information you'll see on the creation of the two tables in what we call the sample DB that I'm creating. We'll have a customer table and an orders table out there, and you'll see the information about the creation of that database at pastebin.com. Also at youtube.com at Bolen Presents or other videos that you can take a look at to further your understanding of using Microsoft's VisualBasic.net and Visual Studio to create projects for yourself. So pause the video if you'd like at this point in time and write down this information, and then later on take a look at it and study it more in detail. Well, what is a Microsoft SQL LocalDB? Well, first of all, it's part of SQL Server Express Edition as well as the full SQL Server, and it includes a LocalDB component, which is a lightweight deployment option that has less requirements and is easier to install. And it's good for a very small one-user kind of project that's embedded into our VisualBasic.net project. It runs in a user mode, so it doesn't require the services that SQL Server Express or SQL Server requires. And so it's not good for a multi-user type of environment, but is good for a single user. If you have those other kinds of requirements, then you want to go with SQL Server Express or the full SQL Server. You also can go to the cloud with Azure, which is the cloud-based version of SQL Server. But the one thing nice is SQL Server Express Edition is free. Repeat, it's free. Therefore, you would benefit to download SQL Server Express and try it out and learn about it, since it is free for you to practice and work with. And what is nice is it allows us to easily migrate to the full-fledged SQL Server full edition or to the Azure cloud. So take advantage of learning about Microsoft SQL Server Express Edition. Well, what are the differences between the SQL Server, SQL Server Express, and Microsoft Access? Well, first of all, SQL Server Express and SQL Server LocalDB have a very modern, robust transaction language called TSQL, Transaction SQL, and it is proprietary to Microsoft, but it's very widely supported and is a full, robust relational database management system. Whereas Microsoft SQL Access has an older ANSI 89 standard, it is a limited client-only type of environment, basically. Also, the database size is different. In Microsoft SQL Access, you only have 2 gigabytes of data size, where with LocalDB or Local Express, you can go up to 10 gigabytes in size. So you have much more there that you can store on that. And our concurrent connections are a little bit different here, because LocalDB is basically a client-oriented one. It is just one person connecting to it on the local machine. If you were using using SQL Server Express on a machine of a client, you're basically limited by the operating system of 10 people concurrently accessing the machine. And if you were to go to the full SQL Server, of course, that limitation does not exist. But also we can have our Microsoft SQL Access placed on a share on a server, and theoretically 255 people could access a Microsoft Access database. However, realistically only about 10 to 20 people can access it without some problems with corruption that might occur in the database. Also, the beauty is we have better, more granular and optimistically type locking in the LocalDB and SQL Server Express, where we do not have that in Microsoft Access. In fact, we have to go in there and actually set how we have locking occurred. The default is none, so there's one area that you want to go in and set the options manually to have better locking on your database. Access to the database itself for a LocalDB, of course, is just the client accessing it. In the SQL Server Express environment, it could be in a client server type of environment. And if we go to Microsoft SQL Access, we're using what's called the old JET engine, or the more modern Microsoft Access database engine to access our database. There we're using OLDB to connect as our provider, versus we're using SQL Client with Microsoft SQL Express and LocalDB. Beauty also with LocalDB and SQL Express is we can easily migrate it up the chain to grow with our company or our business needs as we have it. Whereas Microsoft SQL Access, we're going to have to actually rewrite many of the queries and have to recreate things in a more robust database environment. So you might want to, once again, take advantage of the free LocalDB and SQL Express to learn about it and use it in your applications. Now, where do you get it? Well, you go out to Microsoft and download the 2014 Express version, and I provided you with the URL to that location as of the current time I'm recording. And I have installed the Express and Tools 64-bit because I have a 64-bit machine. If you have a 32-bit machine, an older machine, you'll want to get the 32-bit version. But I highly recommend getting the Express and Tools because you get the Microsoft SQL Management Studio with that as well. So you'll see a number of options for downloading parts of the SQL Server Express. And I take the Express and Tools option for myself. And you'll see also the SQL LocalDB one as well out there. This is the one you'll get for your clients as you install a project on their machine. They'll need to have that little app to run on their client machine to access the LocalDB database file. So remember, you can get all this free at Microsoft Access. Now, as we connect to the server, we have to tell it where we're connecting. And in the case of using the Express 2014 server, we're going to be giving it the, in parentheses, LocalDB / MS SQL LocalDB. This is if we're using the current or future versions of SQL Server Express. If you're using the older 2012 version, you'll use LocalDB / V11.0. As they migrated to 2014, they got rid of the version specific and made it more generic with the MS SQL LocalDB. So those are the two possible ways you'll be looking at your server as you actually connect to the LocalDB. Well, let's get into working with and creating a LocalDB. I have Visual Studio up and running, and I don't have a project as such, and I will not need a project for this because we're just going to be working with the database. So I'm going to come up to the view area in my uh, Visual Studio and go to SQL Server Object Explorer. And there is the Server Object Explorer on my left side, and I'm going to click on Add New SQL Server. And then up will pop the area, and here's where I'll have the ability to choose the server name I'm connecting to. And you'll see I have SQL Server Express that I can install to, but I want to go to the LocalDB version of this, which will be up here, and my older one you'll see is still out there, LocalDB /v11.0. But we're going to be using the newer version in this exercise. This, once again, is one for 2014 server. So I connected that. I'm going to use Windows authentication, and I'm going to hit connect. And you'll see that I have it connected over here on the side. I'm going to hit the arrow. I'm going to also resize things a little bit so you can see it better. And I'm going to come down and click on the database. And you'll see that all I have are my system databases. I don't have any other databases in here. So I'm going to come up to database, highlight it, right click on there and click on add new database. And I'll be prompted with creating this one. And my database name that I'm going to create will be called SampleDB. So I'm just going to hit SampleDB, whoops, DB there. And I'm going to go to a specific location on my drive. And I'm going to go to my U drive, to databases, to my LocalDB databases. And so that's the location where this database, SampleDB, will be created. I'm going to hit OK. Apparently I already have it out there. Let me quickly blow off the old one. I'll go to Users, Databases, LocalDB, and I'm going to blow off that real quickly. I'll delete those off and we'll create a new one. Okay, let's try that again. Now let's create it. There we go. We've created a sample database, and I'll expand it out. You'll see there are no tables in it, and we're going to add a new table. So I'm going to highlight the tables area. I'm going to hit add new table. And I'm going to change the screen a little bit here to have more room to work with. And the first table we're going to add is the customers table. So I'm going to set it to customer. I'm going to also come up here and remove the primary key on that. So I have it just like that. And then I'm going to give it the name for my first field as customer ID. And that'll be my first one. And while I'm in that field, I'm going to come over to my properties, hit the identity specifications, and is identity make true, and it'll start with 1 and increment by 1. So that comes in place on that one. My next field that I'm going to have for the customer table will be customer name. And it's going to be an varchar. I'm going to make this 35 in length, and not allow nulls there as well. The next one will be customer contact, and it's going to be an varchar 35 in length, and I will allow this one to have nulls. And the last one I'm going to put in here is phone, and it'll be an varchar, but I only need 15 for that one, and I'll allow nulls as well. So I've got this set for the different fields, very short for our exercise. Now I'm going to come up to the keys area, and I'm going to add a new primary key. Add primary key. And I'm going to name this primary key, in this case, coming over to properties, I'm going to name it customer ID. And then I'm going to hit the columns area and drop down on columns and go to customer ID, say OK. And you'll see now that I've got the constraint name in place for this one. And I've got the identity set for customer ID. So everything there is set, and I've got my table ready to create. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit update. Preparing the script, and I'm going to go ahead and update the database. And you'll see in a minute, I've got now my new table with my names in here, and you'll see my key is going to be my primary key of customer ID. Let's create another table. I'm going to come back to table and do add new table. And this table will be called orders. On that, once again, I'm going to remove the primary key first. Give this now a name of order ID. And while I'm in here, I'm going to make it also an identity column. So is identity is going to be true, and we'll have that set. My next one will be my foreign key, which is customer ID, and I'm spelling it exactly the same as what I had before. It's going to be an integer as well to match up what the type it was, and I'm not going to allow any nulls. I have to have that foreign key in place. So I always have my orders will always have a customer attached to it. The next one I'm going to add in is to my orders table is the order date. So let me type in order date, and this will be a date type, and I'll allow nulls on that. And the next one will be order quantity. And this will be in just an integer and allow nulls. Very simple database. Now I'm going to come back over to the keys area on this, and I'm going to have this one be my key. So I'm going to right click, add new key, primary key, and I'm going to call it order ID. On that, in my column, once again, I'll come over to my properties, hit the ellipsis button, hit the drop down on the column, and go to order ID. And that fills it in for me there. I could type it down here as well. So we could go either way on that. The next thing I'm going to do is deal with my foreign key. So I'm going to come over here to foreign keys, right click and add new foreign key. And the to table in this case, let me get this keyed in. In fact, I'll just come over to properties and type it in. It's going to be the customers table on that, and the information I'm going to work with in this case, the column, I'm just going to key it in here real quick, is going to be customer ID on that, and I'm going to bring this down so you can see it a little bit better. And our to table in this case is going to be the customers table, and the column will be the customer ID. Okay, on that. So we can see that we've got that in place, and I'll bring over here and you see this also in the area of the properties for this. So I've got that all set. We've got our primary key is order ID. Whoops, got that a little off. ID, there we go. And my constraint for foreign key is orders to customers, using the customer ID as the foreign key, referencing back to the customers table to its customer ID. Okay, everything looks good at this point. We're ready to create that. So I'm going to hit update and update the database. And we'll see it come in, and we'll see our columns, and we'll see our keys. And there's our foreign key constraint and our primary key constraint and our other columns over here. So we've got that all set. I'm going to close out our scripts on that. We don't need that anymore. Now I'm going to come back to the customer table, right click on it, and go to view data. And there's my data. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so I can easier enter in the data. Now our customer ID is an identity field. It's like an auto number field in Microsoft Access, so I don't need to enter in anything there, but I do want to enter in a couple of key records to get started with. So I'm going to enter in a widget company for my first company, widget company, and George Sprocket. It's going to be the contact. Phone number is going to be 555-555-1212. Then I'm going to tab out, and you'll see the auto number will automatically kick in. And I'm going to go to the next one and put in Gadget Enterprise. And I'm going to make Mike Griffin the contact, and the phone number will be 555-555-1234. And the next one I'll bring over, it will be Thingamajigs or Us. Thingamajigs are Us, and the contact's going to be Sally Peterson. And the phone number is going to be 555-555-9876. And there are our three companies, Widget, Gadget Enterprise, and Thingamajigs are Us, with our contacts of George Sprocket, Mike Griffin, and Sally Peterson, and our phone numbers. I'm going to hit Update, and we'll have that all in place. I'm going to close this one out, and I'm going to come over here to the orders and add also by going to View Data, and I'm going to enter in the orders. So my first one for the orders for this one will be to add in for our first company, which was the widget company, which had an ID of 1. And I will let the auto number for Microsoft Access or the identity number take place here automatically for the order ID. We'll come over here for the date, and the date will be July 21st, 2015. And the order quantity I'm going to make for 125. I'm going to tab, go to the new row, and you'll see order ID came in. Tab over. I'm going to use also customer 1 again and use July 28th. And come over, and the second order will be for 200. Next one will be also for the same company, and it'll be August 4th, so I'll use 8/4/2015, and this time the amount will be for 125. Okay, next one will be for company 2, and this one will have a date of August 15th. And we'll have an amount for this one of 200. And the next one will be for company 3. And company 3's order date will be July 22nd, 2015 for the amount of 50. And then we'll have another one for company 3. And we'll use July 29th, 2015, and we'll make it 75. And we'll put one more in for the company 3, and we'll make it for August 5th. And we'll make it for an amount of 100. And I'm going to hit the update, and we'll have those values in place. Okay, we've got that done. And what I'm going to do is make certain I'm going to come over here now to View, and I'm going to go to the Server Explorer. And what I'm going to do is hit a refresh and make certain that things are clean here. And I'm going to add a connection here real quick. Once again, I'm going to add the same connection I had, which is LocalDB. MS SQL LocalDB. And here I should be able to see my tables come in. Whoops, I didn't get LocalDB here. Let me get that right. There we go. Now it should come in. And there's our table. There's our sample DB. And you'll see that I've got that up, and we'll see the tables on this side using the SQL Server Explorer. Okay, I'm going to, at this point, close the connection. And I'm actually going to delete the connection. So I'm going to delete the connection, not the database, from the Server Explorer. So I'm going to hit delete. Okay, so it's now totally removed from there. I'm going to close that out. Now I'm going to come back to my database, and I'm going to detach it. Not delete, detach. And if I have all my connections closed correctly, which might not happen, we'll see, might be something holding it open. So let me double check on that. I think we'll actually have that happen here in a minute. Could not detach. Let me do a file close solution, make sure everything's closed out. Now let's see if I can close it out. The detach. And it's going to be stubborn for me, I think. Okay, well, I'll tell you what, let me go back to looking at me for a second while I come over here and work with this. What I'm having trouble with is actually getting that to detach. So let me do a file close of my Visual Studio. I'm going to reopen it and see if I can reinitialize that to occur on that. So let me get me back, and I'm going to go back to SQL Server on that, and I'm going to go to databases, and I'm going to try to detach again, and it detached this time. So if you do have trouble with detaching the database, you might have to close out SQL Server Express temporarily. That allows that connection to close out, and then come back into it and detach it. Do not delete. If you delete, everything goes away. Right now we have on the U drive the actual database with our data in place. Now we're going to use that in our next video as we create our first Visual Basic.NET application using the LocalDB. And the reason we detached it instead of keeping it alive in our system is by detaching it, as we reattach it to our new project, we can copy in that database and embed it into our project. If we did not detach it first, we could not bring it into our project. So that's why we detach it from our system. So it's not too hard to create it. It's very much like Microsoft Access in setting up the database. There are some different terminology that's used, like identity versus auto number, and you saw me use some of the constraint commands to create that and set it up. Those are things you'll learn later on, and you can always go out to W3 Schools and learn about SQL and the different syntaxes that are used for the different types of databases that you might be working with. We're working with Microsoft SQL LocalDB, and it uses the same language as all the other Microsoft Server products. So as you learn Transact SQL, you'll become proficient in it. So go out there and get your hands dirty in the code. Get Microsoft Server SQL Express 2014 edition installed in your machine if you haven't done so. Set it up and create a local DB, and you can go back and watch this project, and also there are walkthroughs out at Microsoft to create the local DB as well. And remember, we want to detach it before we start our next project. And you can get all the information about this video and the setup at pastebin.com that I showed you earlier in the video. So get your hands dirty in the code. Until next time, take care.